The religion of peace strikes again in Brussels. 31 dead and over 200 injured.
A report from CARE, however, says that these, of course, were not Muslims.
The perpetrators were heard screaming Allahu Akbar before they exploded into tiny Islamic pieces.
This cannot be taken as a statement of their faith, and if you disagree, you're bigoted.
After the attack in Brussels, there was this, it was more than just, I don't even know how to describe it. I don't know what Orwellian fucking nightmare, what otherworldly existence we've fallen into. That The View is now supporting Donald Trump now. I mean...
like I said, it's predominantly women, and we all know, let's all be frank, they vote with their feels.
They do. I think
and right now, they feel scared. And Donald Trump makes them feel better than Hillary Clinton, because who wouldn't feel better?
Because Donald Trump has been the only person who's been able to talk about any kind of...
Well, frankly, even if both of them were ball gagged,
right,
you'd vote for Donald Trump simply on the fact that he's a 6'2" Irish guy who talks shit, and Hillary Clinton is a slimy, smarmy cunt.
Well,
so
I think a lot of it also does have to do with, there's a part of our lizard brains which, when we hear Hillary Clinton, it sounds like a dog barking. I mean, she barks like a dog already, so
yeah,
it's not that far from the truth. But what Donald Trump has been able to, I think I heard something that Sam Harris has said before. When you have somebody on the right like Donald Trump, I mean, say what you want, I don't personally think that any attacks of racism or sexism are accurate.
No, they're clearly not.
Right, but he sounds racist to the left because he talks about things that the left won't.
Yeah. That's like calling me a sexist because I make videos about feminism.
Exactly.
Fuck you. I'm a shit talker, but it doesn't mean that I'm a sexist.
He's called out Islam many times. He said Islam is a problem. He hasn't said he knows why, but, I mean, I'll give you a hint, Donald Trump, if you're ever listening. It has something to do with the religion of Islam.
It has something to do with the book.
Just something about having a pedophilic warlord as your prophet. That kind of messes with people's heads. I think that's what does it.
Strike the necks and fingertips of the infidel.
Yeah, kill them wherever you may find them. Oh, but it's a religion of... I have gotten so fucking pissed off at atheists who will play apologetics for Islam. Kyle from fucking Secular Talk, this douchebag was talking about how Islam is a religion of peace. Oh, this is a verse from Islam. This is a verse from Islam. It says don't kill people. And the problem is that even the verses he uses, there's one verse that everybody who's an apologist for Islam uses. It's
wait. The never destroy a fruit-bearing tree, don't kill women or children, that verse?
There's actually that verse is just as bad because literally, like, the next verse right after, except in times of war.
No, the end of that sentence is, and divide freely between you the booty of war.
Yeah, brilliant.
It's literally saying,
it's
it's saying when you go into an area and you're conquesting, don't destroy the buildings because you want to live in them. Don't destroy the fruit-bearing trees because you want to eat them. Don't kill women and children because you want to enslave and rape them.
Yeah. Hey, at least they're not killing the children. They're just raping them. That's pretty peaceful.
Totally fine. Totally fine.
Yeah. It's just such bullshit. There's actually another verse that's even worse. It's the one where there's no compulsion in religion, and it's like literally the next verse is like, except for people who aren't of the book. It's just like, how can you fucking read this and not see this as the bullshit it is? I mean, that is why the Islamic conquest of India were so vastly genocidal. I mean, it's even worse than genocidal. It wasn't even... It was a religious impetus that they had to kill people that were not of the book. So
yeah, they have to.
When you have someone like Donald Trump, who is going up against Obama, or I mean, Hillary Clinton basically represents Obama.
Yeah, she's Obama's third term.
Yeah, so it's like Obama said, the future of the world must not belong to people who insult Islam. Really?
Yeah,
really?
Fuck you.
Fuck you and the high horse you rode in on. Just Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
Obama has been nothing but a joke since like day 2. So
I mean, you guys voted for
nope,
him
nope, I
twice.
cannot vote.
Oh yeah, I forget you're a felon.
I am innocent in all this. I am but bearing witness, sir.
Well, you never can vote again though, and unless I mean, you could say you're an illegal immigrant and just
Yeah, I know. Actually, I think I can reapply for my rights at some point. I just haven't done it yet.
that would be fun. But
Yeah.
the View called Donald Trump the voice of reason, and it's
Yup.
for the same exact reason that everybody else has been saying this. The people who are on the liberal side of this, Bill Mayer has said the same thing. Sam Harris has said the same thing. When you have somebody named Donald Trump who's going up there saying Islam is a problem, who's going up against someone who won't even say the words radical Islam, she won't even
Yeah.
say the words. Because
It's not though, because they did something bad. As soon as you radicalize, you're just a radical. And that's what they want to say, is just
Yeah,
a
they
radical.
wanna
They
say
don't want
that-
to say radical Muslim.
yeah, and they want to say, oh, it's all radicals do the same thing. I don't see Amish people blowing themselves up.
No.
I don't see
No,
Buddhists
I don't
doing
even
the same
see I don't even see the radical anarchists that live in my area going out and blowing things up. They
Radical-
spray paint stuff.
radical
That's as far as they've
anarchists.
gone.
That's such a ridiculous thing, radical.
It's
anarchists.
hilarious. They're great. There's like 8 of them. No shit. There's 8 of them. And I'm not exaggerating. They get permits for the city, and they stand on a street corner and like wave signs in their little masks and shit.
That's so cute. Anarchists.
It is adorable. It is true. Like we drive by and honk and shit. They're fantastic.
That's beautiful. I mean that's diversity in action. That's a leftist.
They
utopia.
look like juggalos. No shit. They're all like fat guys. You know what I mean? They're all fat, sloppy looking dudes,
It's because
or
they can't
really
get a
skinny
job.
dudes.
They can't get a job. I actually used to identify as anarchist, so like a moment of checking my privilege or something, that used to be me. And I remember the thought process. It's because I wanted to be anti-establishment, but being leftist was seen as too establishment for me, and I didn't want to be a conservative. That's
Yeah.
exactly what I thought. And you know what? It's like, if you guys really want to be anti-establishment, just be a straight white male.
Yeah, that's all that's required at this point.
But The View, back on topic. The View had a segment where they called Trump a voice of reason.
Yeah. We're
And-
living in a new age, Ape.
I think that you're actually right about something. I think that the left, the far right, the sort of what do you call them? The alt-right people, they talk about women being like this downfall of Western civilization. I don't think they understand. There have been
No,
studies to
I don't
prove
think
this.
they understand that the predominant supporters of the Nazi Party in Germany were women.
I don't think they understand. I don't think they've ever talked to a woman.
Yeah,
Because-
in all seriousness.
Because the thing about, there have been studies to prove this. Women have a more, I think the term is ontological form of morality, which means they believe in the rules. They're basically establishment shills. So whatever you teach women are the rules is what they will believe. And
Yeah, it's what has led 3 different religions to say, essentially speaking, that women are the keepers of religion.
They
Because
are.
once they have it taught to them, they do it every time the way they were taught.
right, and you can't be sexist. Remember, women are exactly the same as men, and Islam is just as bad. It's just, there's this cultural relativism on the left that I find absolutely intolerable. I find it disgustingly
Yeah,
ridiculous.
well, it's a
because
joke.
It's more than a joke. It's this idea that because, God is dead now, guys. Remember, guys, God is dead. But now, what is their source of morality? They don't want to have any morality. They don't want to have anybody telling them any rules, so they invent this idea that, all rules are just made up. All rules are made up, and all cultures are equal. Everything is relative. Oh, by the way, we are making the rules now. So there's this sort of sinister, hypocritical double standard in the left, where they don't want any rules to be applied to their pet projects, like Islam. They don't want anybody to be able to look at Islam and say, maybe these fuckers have terrible beliefs because their religion is bad, and it needs a reformation, or maybe a pogrom or two, before it will be subsumed into subservience to secularism. The same exact way, by the way, that we did to Christianity. We subsumed it under the powers of secularism by telling them, no, go fuck yourself. We're secular now. The same
Yeah,
thing
you
we
don't
do
get to
them.
behave that way.
But we can't do that because all cultures are relative and
Because racist.
everything is equal. It's just
That'd be racist. They brown people.
they're brown, and when you look at that and you see the way that Donald Trump is reacting, he looks like a voice of reason. And
And thus will be treated as such.
basically, the way I view it, the most negative part of Trump that I think exists is Trump represents a political figure that feels exactly like Hugo Chavez. So
Yeah, or Mussolini, frankly.
or I mean, even Hitler, I suppose. I don't want to.
I don't like that's unfair.
I know
because
it is,
are
but
you familiar with Italian fascism?
oh, okay. I guess I'm not too familiar with it, but I think I can understand what you're talking about.
It's the kind of idea that he's talking about saving American businesses
Right.
using his power in the government. That's
Yeah.
verbatim Italian fascism.
Yeah, okay, that does make that there is a lot of, but I think that when usually people talk about Trump is like Hitler, they usually mean Trump's a racist.
They
but,
mean that he's going to round up the Muslims, put them in camps, and gas them.
Yeah.
That's what they mean. They're going to Zyklon be the Muslims.
Yes, Zyklon. They're going to call Ben Garrison. He's going to be the executive of Jews of Jewish extermination.
It's laughable. He does represent an era of fascism, but like I joked online, fucking I'll take that over communism.
Well, yeah,
So
sure.
if you guys are looking to instill communism from your point of view, then I'm gonna have to side with Trump.
Well, I mean, I don't know why you support Bernie Sanders. That he basically is a fucking communist. He's two steps
Because
away.
The only things he can do, the only social programs he can put in, are the two things I support.
Which is
Single payer healthcare. And any sort of he pushes for things like even that some of the guys on the right do. I don't know what Trump's stance on this is.
Well, I think Bernie Sanders is actually against the TPP.
He is, which is I was about to say. My other stance is he's against the TPP and he's
Right.
against having huge amounts of money in politics.
Yeah, and
Those are the stances he can actually do something about. And
Right.
all the stances he's getting elected on from idiots, they're useful idiots because he can't do anything to help their cause.
I think that that's something that Donald Trump is actually able to connect with, because there's only really two things the president actually can do. The first is negotiate trade deals.
Yep.
And the second is go to war. And I think that Donald Trump is perfectly placed to express this Americanism over those two fields, because we need better trade deals and we want to go to war with Muslims. That's basically what everybody feels like right now. War with ISIS and trade deals. But
ironically, what most people don't seem to understand is the same thing would be accomplished with Sanders regardless.
I guess so. I kind of feel a little bit less that way about Sanders.
I think
because
Sanders is just a sleeper, if you will.
No,
I don't think
feel
most people.
so.
No. I mean specifically about the issue of things like the TPP. Most people don't know that he doesn't want expanded international trade.
I've also heard
Most
him
people
talk
don't
about.
know that.
I've also heard him talk against open borders with the same kind of language. That open borders might help all the Mexicans flowing over our borders, but it's not going to help the workers here.
Because he understands American workers.
I think he does, but my problem is that he's also extremely weak. Like his character, he doesn't have a strong character. Like I hate to use this meme, but it fits. If he can't defend his microphone, how can he defend the country?
Yeah, and I understand that, but I mean, it's just
that's economics
to me,
policies aside, because we can get into that. I don't want to today, but his economic policies are full of shit. But he's not a very strong character. And when I'm talking about Donald Trump as a Hitler, I don't mean he's racist and he's an evil Nazi. I mean he represents that sort of zeitgeist of populism.
Yeah.
I represent the people. It's the same thing.
Does.
The same thing that happened with Rome and the rise of, like, if you look at the political position of the first man in Rome, it's this guy who basically could do no wrong, who represented the cultural zeitgeist at whatever specific month or day that he did. So there's this zeitgeist.
Yeah.
There's this cultural event that is incredibly anti-establishment, that is pro-Americanism, that's able to say things that other politicians simply aren't able to say. and that is Islam is actually the problem. And you know what we could do a little bit less with? We could do with a little with fewer Mexicans. I don't think we need as many Mexicans as we have right now.
It's just such an absurd notion that it's okay to do that, that it's okay to just open borders and say, fuck it, let's go.
Yeah, and
Like, no, 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 that'll work, but only if we're allowed to do the same thing.
yeah,
And
no.
that would not look good for the Mexicans either.
I mean,
Because American businesses would predatorily move in openly.
well, I mean, what do you
Americans
think we're
themselves
we're
would buy
already
land.
doing that? We're
Well, no,
already
no, I'm
moving
saying
in.
private Americans with a way more open and way less overhead capital base could then cross the border and just buy shit out from under the Mexicans.
We already are. I mean, all of our factories are moving to Mexico.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm talking about small scale though.
Well,
What we're talking about, you're
yeah.
talking about large scale socioeconomics. I'm saying literally there would be people moving down there and just for their retirement buying a clothing store in
Yeah.
Mexico.
Well, I mean, you know
And-
how it
and
is.
denying that to
when
them.
white people move into a place, it's called gentrification and it's racist. But when brown
Yeah.
people move in, it's called what is it?
Yeah,
Cultural
the way I
enrichment.
described it, yeah, the way I describe it is when white people move into a place and establish their own pockets and things like that, it's called colonialism and imperialism.
Yeah, exactly.
And when brown people do it in white countries, it's called multiculturalism.
Or yeah,
It's fine.
It's ridiculous.
It's
I
fine.
mean, that's like the greatest fear that I have. I can understand why people turn to white nationalism when I see
Yeah,
that
and
kind of
that's-
thing.
I understand people like Thorium and a couple of the other guys I know
Yeah.
that have turned that direction. I would perhaps be there myself if I weren't such a cerebral nut job.
Yeah, I mean, I could never do that because I see white nationalism as a symptom of the disease, not the cure.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it really is. Because
Yeah,
the
of
problem
course.
is racial identity politics. That's the problem. The problem is that you have the same thing that's happening with Islam and leftists. Like, read, I've only seen snippets of it, but Tommy Robinson wrote a book about his experience in Luton. And you can
Yeah.
see the same exact thing that's happening in Luton with the Labor Party being completely in bed with extremist Muslims. It's happening in the Democratic Party with these con men like Al Sharpton and black supremacists. There are this extreme identity-driven bullshit artists, reverse racists, cultural Marxists who have completely taken over the fringe left, which is now the tail that is wagging the Democratic dog.
Yeah.
So-
And it's really pitiful, and we're going to be going through a huge political shift in the next couple decades, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I mean,
We're looking at the first part of it. Most people are like, "Well, once this is over, at least it'll be over." You're out of your
Right.
fucking mind.
No,
This is literally the first spasm, guys.
yet all you have to do to see what happens when something like this happens is look at South Africa. That's
Exactly. Or any other
exactly
nation that's ever done something like this.
whenever racial identity politics
Look at
gets that
Zimbabwe.
bad. I mean, Zimbabwe is the most hilarious and the worst example of it. I mean, did you hear that Robert Mugabe wants white people to move back to Zimbabwe?
Yeah.
Because they took all the white people's land, because now there's no more white farmers. Guess what happens when you take all the white people's land? Oh, there's nobody who knows how to farm anymore.
Yeah, well, it's like I was describing in South Africa. They did things like destroyed pieces of infrastructure, calling them white.
Yeah.
It's a white power plant. Fine, you build a black power plant, dumbass.
It's just the stupidest. So that's the result of identity politics.
Yeah, of
and
course.
when you're in South
And
Africa,
technically, so was Nazism.
exactly. So when you're in South Africa, what real recourse do South Africans have other than white nationalism?
Yeah.
Nothing. If I was in South Africa right now, I would be a white nationalist. Worse than that, I would be a white separatist. I would think that we need to get a band of white people to go around and just carve out a section of this country that is ours. Because that's the defense to racial supremacy. The only defense is either dismantling it or countering it with more racial supremacy. So
Yep.
the thing is that I hate about this is that this genocidal event that is sure to happen if anybody acts rationally in the next 50 years, there's going to be a genocidal reaction in the white community to this shit. It is
Yes.
happening specifically because these black supremacists, these Islamic supremacists are being empowered by liberals with white guilt.
Yep, and I've told people what's happening now is the left is accidentally preparing for the groups it's protecting genocide
Exactly. And
by instilling them with specific privilege what you're doing is setting them up for failure. You're setting them up to be lambasted as privileged individuals.
There's no other way to counter that. If you create a section, because it's a simple idea, racial reciprocity and a self-interest. So if you have rational self-interest, this is why white nationalism is a symptom of the disease. Civic nationalism is the answer. Your self-interest is supposed to be placed in the state. You're supposed to be able to say, I am acting with patriotism and virtue for the benefit of the state, and the state is also in the symbiotic relationship where the state is acting in the benefit of me.
But the only other alternative when that feels like it's broken down is to identify somewhere else.
Exactly. And
that's where we're at now.
That's exactly what this globalist, what this multiculturalist, what this diversity shit is doing. It is breaking the symbol for this, the slogan for the next 100 years is going to be everything old is new again. So all of these old racial tensions, all of these millennia-old fights that have been on pause.
Where do you think race realism is coming from?
It's from a lot of black people.
They're
apparently.
eugenics. They're eugenicists that are coming back, a system that had been abandoned, almost 100 years ago.
And the reason why is that for the past 50 years, there's been this ideological war between communism and capitalism. And communism lost that war, but now what are people going to identify as? It's a basic of human psychology. People need to have some sort of broader narrative to fit their...
conceptual identity.
Right. And that is why Donald Trump looks like the voice of reason. Because for a lot of people, Donald Trump fits that new narrative, and he is actually amazingly good at fulfilling that new narrative. Yeah, but the left hates it.
He fills his responsibility in that role.
Right. So I love Donald Trump as a historical event.
Yes, me too. That's kind of what I think it is.
Yeah, but the person I have my misgivings about him. He'll be a better president than Hillary Clinton, but I
have no love lost for Ben Shapiro personally. I've never thought he was all that impressive.
I mean, that's the thing. I've lost so very much respect for Ben Shapiro. I've lost so much. His arguments against Donald Trump, he tried to say that protectionism is not a conservative issue.
He may as well have attacked his hands.
He may as well just tie his hands behind his head and bash his head against a fucking wall.
I mean, he may as well be the guy saying he's got tiny hands.
Exactly.
As well.
You're
at that point now.
It's a stupid argument. Protectionism was the mainstay. It was like there were three issues that the Republican Party ran on: protectionism, anti-slavery, and anti-communism. Those were the three things that the Republican Party has had in the last 100 years. So the idea that unionism or that protectionism are somehow antithetical to conservatism is basically pants-on-head retarded. It's what
the Conservative Party has done to itself over the course of the last 50 years.
And this is why I despise modern conservatives, because they have consistently chosen to pick positions that lose. These are positions that anyone with half a brain cell can say, this is retarded. They throw out...
This will not work.
Free trade is a losing issue.
No. Free trade's good. It's totally fine. It is no tariffs. Open free trade.
Yeah, let's have a mother of four in Detroit competing for the same job with a 5-year-old girl living in Taiwan. It's
fine. Totally this will balance out fine.
And he had the gall. Ben Shapiro had the fucking gall to call that welfare, to call protecting America's own interest welfare. You might as well call the fucking military a form of welfare.
All I'm saying is, if Ben Shapiro wanted to give the alt-right more fuel against Jews, all he did was just win that argument.
Yeah, he basically
he could have just given the alt-right like a gun and let him shoot him, because he just stood up and said, I'm going to say something that only the Goyim would believe.
Exactly.
Who cares about America's interests? They're not for you. They're bad for you.
It's just welfare. It's just those greedy goys. That's exactly what he... Did you actually see in one of his podcasts? Yes. He took Twitter replies of the happy merchant picture, and he was, this is what the alt-right believes. They're all anti-Semites. Oy vey, guys. You gotta shut this down. Shut it down, guys.
Shut it down.
He's become a fucking parody of himself. I
He
can't
really
listen to him
has.
anymore.
And if you're still offended by the happy merchant picture, that's on you.
Yeah, if you are really that detached from reality that you're offended by someone tweeting you the happy merchant figure, you're an old piece of shit. Like, seriously, get off the internet now.
Yeah,
Now.
seriously.
But
Seriously, that has become just a norm. People reskin the fucking image and
Yeah.
use it for other people on a regular basis.
like, but speaking of everything old is new again, I recently had a row with Lefty Pole, with Marxists.
oh yeah.
Yeah, apparently, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but there's I browse the internet because I love the memes they have on 4chan. But on 8chan, there's a board called Lefty Poll, which is full of Marxists who are apparently against identity politics. And
That's possible.
the instant idea is, how could someone who's obsessed with the identity politics of class be against identity politics? And the answer is because they're hypocrites. That's
They're
how.
massive hypocrites.
But I got into an argument, and I actually had somebody who's apparently in like the connection with Lefty Pole, who has like 200 subscribers on his YouTube, wanting to talk to me about how I don't understand what real Marxism is. It's such a patronizing, condescending way, and I've heard this happen every single time anybody talks to a Marxist. You don't understand what real Marx. It's like AIDS Skrillex saying, "No, Stalin and Mao, they were capitalists. I've done my research." Just stop. But
Yeah, well, again, it's the same thing you hear is it's the first layer of defense for apologetics. It's
Yeah.
literally, you don't understand
Yeah.
Christianity, you don't understand Islam,
Yeah.
you don't understand feminism, it's the first step of all apologetics is to
Exactly.
say you don't understand the position, because
Yeah.
then I can insert whatever it is I claim to be the position
Yeah,
as
exactly.
the penultimate position.
feminism is about equality, guys. Remember, guys. Oy vey, guys.
understand.
Don't be anti-Semitic. It's just
You don't understand. It's about equality. You don't
Yeah.
understand. Islam's a religion of peace.
protectionism
Like,
is the same as welfare, you greedy guys. It's just
how
it's
dare
the same
you want
fucking shit.
America's self-interest to exist?
It's the
I mean,
same
clearly.
bullshit on every single. Whenever you talk about these stupid apologetics, which is why I can't listen to Ben Shapiro, because he's become worse than apologist. He's just an idiot. This is level one, just bad argument. You don't understand.
He's gone full retard.
But he wants to talk to me, so I'm thinking that we could bring him on. And you know what? You're a lefty. You're one of those liberals who are a front for communism. So I thought that both you and I could have a conversation and with him and see what he has to say. See what pearls of wisdom he can bring to the table. So what do you think about that Maoist guy? How's
Jason?
Yeah, you know, the one who's like has his dick hard for North
on
Korea.
Lefty Pope, he's a bit of a meme. Everyone hates that guy. He's like your traditional tanky of throw all the people who don't agree with your very specific rule set in the gulag, don't. Okay, to be fair, I don't actually know Jason's specific political views, but I just know that he's often associated with the stereotypical tanky.
Is he like your representation of like a storm fag? Is that like, because
I guess, yeah, like the whole red fascism thing. I guess
Yeah.
Jason would kind of be the face of that, as far as I'm aware.
Because I mean, like, I know I'll lose the amazing support that I, as a gay guy who fucks his half black boyfriend, gets on poll. I'll lose all of that. I'll lose it. But I absolutely despise storm
identity
fags.
politics. You're gonna love it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be like this to be a dig against you, but it really is. When I look at like Lefty Pole and then I look at Pole and I always think, like, the ironic statement I can think of is, how can these people be so against identity politics when they are so absorbed in it? The obvious conclusion is that they're both fucking hypocrites. That's just the obvious conclusion.
Lefty Pole is absorbed in identity politics.
Oh, yes,
I mean, I know
absolutely.
pollers, but they accept that. Like, that's their thing. But
Yeah.
Lefty Pole, I wouldn't say they are. Why? I mean, do you want to save this for when you're recording? I mean,
No, this is fine.
hey, I mean, yeah. Why do you think lefty pole are kind of into the identity politics thing?
Well, I mean, you constantly talk about class as an identity. That's identity politics. I mean, as a simple like metric, when you're talking about someone's identity and purpose and sort of this group mentality of a class structure versus another class structure, that's identity politics. You're building up a historical narrative that puts you in this political identity that sets you against an alternate identity. That's identity politics.
Well, yeah, that's fair enough. But I guess my response to that would be, I mean, identity politics, the way I see it today, is something where your own identity affects the views that you're allowed to have and the legitimacy of your views. And as well as that, I normally see identity as kind of one of the things you're born with, like race, gender,
Right.
sexuality. And I guess class would fall under that as well, but it's not set in stone like those other things.
Right. So,
But I think the main problem with identity politics today is how your identity is somehow related to your argument. And I think a lot of people, I mean, myself, I'm probably considered quite, middle class for like,
you're one of the people who's going in the gulag, right? You're a
probably,
bourgeoisie.
probably. I mean, I'm not actual bourgeois in that, I don't own any means of production. But I'm definitely not like, I mean, Marxist theory doesn't account for a middle class, but I just say I'm middle class because it gets on the nerves of some of the other leftists that I hang out with. But I mean,
like
yeah, my
to
point
boil
is, though,
down what
even
you're trying to
though-
say
even though
is
I'm-
that I apologize. To boil down what you're trying to say is that you only hate identity politics when it completely destroys your ability to argue using facts, right?
Exactly.
But that's exactly what Marxism does.
How so?
Exactly. So you touched on it a little bit earlier that Marxism doesn't account for the existence of a middle class. Let's delve into a little bit because my position on Marxism isn't some facile one-dimensional position that socialism is evil, guys. No, it's actually I disagree and hate the perspective of Marxism because it is completely unable to interact in any kind of what's known as political or economic reality because Marxism is a deterministic theory. And deterministic theories, if you've ever read the Bible, have a sort of statistical, they have a selection bias built in to the theory itself. So when you set out something that is a prophecy, which is what Marxism is, that's what the Communist Manifesto basically is. Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto before he wrote Das Kapital, and which, by the way, is sort of like a post hoc ad proctor hoc. It's the fallacy that Marx uses all the time is he sets out what do I want to prove, and then he tries to find the evidence to prove it. And when you look at the evidence he tries to prove it, it is this prophecy, this religious prophecy that is completely unfalsifiable. Because again, it's the selection bias inherent in deterministic views of history. If it happens, well, look at this over here. That's proof that we're right. If it doesn't happen, we're just waiting for it to happen, guys. It's unfalsifiable. So
are you talking about materialism in general? Yeah?
I'm talking about the Marxist assertion of his deterministic view of history. The Marxist view of history is that communism will naturally flow out of capitalism.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is with Marx is that not everything he said was perfect. Like, and there are actually a lot of alternative critiques of capitalism that were around the same time as him.
Well,
And
then would you say that
I
you're
mean, that
not
he was
a Marxist,
wrong about
or-
some things. For instance, he said that capitalism would fall on its own accord due to the so many contradictions that it has. But now we can see today that that's not the case, and the only way we're really going to get rid of capitalism is through violent revolution, because
Yeah.
the ruling
And,
class would never willingly or allow the system to collapse itself, as we've seen in things like 2008, for example. So, I mean, Marx wasn't really right down to the letter about every single thing, but he definitely laid the foundations for more developed ideas to come along, and for other communist ideologies to build on them.
so then I suppose this is where you come in with your own personal change in Marx, because you can see that as a flaw in Marx, along with a number of other flaws in Marx's ideology. So this is where you've decided to alter your perspective, and on your YouTube channel.
Well,
which-
I don't know about that particular example you gave, because honestly, I'm not too sure what you mean by that. But my point is that very specific things, they don't have to necessarily always be every single part of Marxism be followed down to the letter,
Right.
And again, that's one of the reasons you do have so many extensions of Marxism and so many adaptations of communism in a way.
Well, I believe
Because everyone kind of
that.
thinks it can be done in a different way, and that's why you have like 50 different types of communism.
Right, and I think the core of Marxism should be understood as a messianic. Well, I mean, I'd say cult personally, but a messianic belief in the return to a very Rousseauian state of nature, which is
Well-
the core of what makes me conservative. Is this idea that the state of nature, where before society existed, we were these beautiful angels, these
I
wonderful
don't really believe in
creatures.
that. You have to understand that leftists and Marxists believe that there's no such thing as human nature, and that
Right.
it's completely dependent. People's behavior is completely dependent on the material conditions that they grow up in.
So, would you say you agree with that? So, this is the second time we're coming together to try and record something. The first time was fun. I had a good time with it. I have to say.
Yeah, it was good.
Except the issue was that we fucking lost everything. It's because
Oh, and I am feeling better now as well, so that's
oh,
good.
wonderful about that. Yeah, at the end of
Yeah.
that, did you actually throw up at the end of that?
Oh yeah.
I'm like, I don't know, man. I hope you are feeling better. Was it something you ate?
No, I'm perfectly fine now. Yeah, I wasn't feeling great for a couple of days after, but yeah, no, we're good now.
Yeah, well, if only that can be said about me. I've had a cold for the past few fucking weeks. It's starting to like.
Oh, it's horrible.
I'm thinking it might be like internet cancer at this point.
Internet, of course. Yeah.
But to this time, I was hoping that we could keep it a little bit shorter and talk about a specific subject or bring up a specific topic. You brought up something, but we had already discussed it, and we actually have the recording for our discussion last time. Do you think
That's fine, then.
our discussion last time was good enough, or did you want to like go over it again?
I'll be perfectly honest. I can't remember exactly what we went over, but I think I must have got the main points in there. So it's probably not worth doing a complete redo. So yeah.
All right, well that's fine. If that's the case, then do you have another topic that you wanted to bring up? Otherwise, we could just get into like rolling over the same topics we did last time.
Well, I think the one that you brought up, we were talking about before, was a pretty solid one to go with. It's got plenty of content that we can get through, and
Right.
yeah.
Why I believe Marxism inherently leads to a totalitarian state.
Yeah.
Alright.
And the thing is with that is that there are different kind of aspects to it, because you've got the revolution itself, and how you can argue that the revolution is unstable and it will always lead to things like the USSR, and then you've also got the actual socialist and communist society that you can talk about there as well.
Right. The
So
actual
we can go through all
socialist.
of that.
That's actually something I would like you to talk about, the actual socialist and communist society. This is something that I don't think a lot of people realize, but would you go into what exactly the end goal for an ideal socialist or Marxist state is?
Yeah, sure. So basically, socialism from the far left isn't, as a lot of people understand it, isn't just big government. Or isn't just welfare capitalism. It's actually a completely different system where instead of there being any private property, by that I mean private property where property used to make profit off of. There won't be any private property, and there won't be any CEOs either. The means of production would be owned and maintained by the working class, collectively and democratically. So basically, any decision that an employer that we have today would make would be instead made by the actual people working at this place among themselves in a democratic fashion.
Right.
And then the idea is that after decades of successful socialism, resources should become collectivized to the point where currency isn't really necessary anymore, and the state shouldn't really have any actual purpose to fulfill anymore, because socialists believe that the state under capitalism has to perpetually oppress the working class, as it's kind of like a majority interest against a minority interest. So without the state, that we think capitalism couldn't really work. However, under socialism, of course, you're not oppressing the working class, and you're only oppressing the ruling class for as long as they still have power, which would only be until you redistribute their wealth.
Right.
So we think that, as the state would run out of purpose, it would essentially wither away, and you just wouldn't have a state anymore. So essentially, we believe that after decades of successful socialism, you would have a classless, stateless, and currency-less society in which the people working in certain areas democratically decide how things are run among themselves.
Right.
So I know that wasn't the most concise definition, but it gives you an idea.
That fits perfectly. So this
But
actually...
does this require a global utopia?
Well, communism itself, I mean, there's a huge debate among leftists about socialism on one state, and whether or not we could ever truly have socialism or communism in one state. But really, I think the general accepted term is that you can have socialism in one country, even though it may be a bit unstable due to outside capitalist force. But actual full-on communism without the state, without currency, and without classes, you're probably going to need worldwide, or if not, most of the big superpowers of the world to be, communist.
Right.
Okay, fair enough. I just wanted to clarify.
So this is...
No, that's fine.
This brings up the old conversation we were having when I was talking about the inherent cognitive biases involved in believing in Marxism and socialism. So, is there any state that you can think of that has ever successfully brought about this this stateless existence?
Well, of course, no. In every attempt of communism, I mean, I'm not going to be one of those guys that is going to say communism has been tried or something, because it has been tried, and there are faults that are on the left, and I put my hands up for that. But the closest we've ever got to socialism is the part where the state control the means of production, which under Leninism or other variants of that would be kind of the stepping stone between capitalism and socialism. The only problem is due to, many factors, which is probably a completely different topic. We've never really got past the point of the state controlling things, and then the workers have never controlled the means of production. So really, by definition that I've given, we've never had socialism. So,
right. So by that definition, we've never been able to get from communism to so the idea is
capitalism to socialism. Yeah.
Right. The idea is that capitalism should flow, and there should be this revolution, and then there should be communism, and then socialism. This is an incredibly endemically deterministic view of history. Like I spoke about before, deterministic views of history work exactly like a religion, like religious prophecy. Whenever it doesn't happen, you can say that it didn't happen perfectly, or we should try again, or, we need to sacrifice more animals, maybe we need to sacrifice your child, that kind of shit. It just is an ending spiral of we need to do more to sacrifice to the utopian idea of Marxism. And if it ever does happen in any minute detail, like I'm sure feminists have talked about, there's this one tribe over in India where there's an actual, where there's a matriarchy. That means that men being in control isn't natural. It's just they overblow it, they oversimplify it, and there's this cognitive bias that sets up what is in philosophical terms known as a complete tautology. Pragmatists understand this as a form of it's a fallacy of composition, because it makes the ideology completely unfalsifiable. completely unfalsifiable. So if I were to say to someone who's a Marxist, well, all of these times that communism has been tried, it never led to that socialist state, so therefore I think we can assume that it is impossible for it to lead to that socialist state. Well, the answer is always, well, we just haven't done it good enough. It just hasn't been communist enough. No, the answer is more likely with the evidence we have. I'm not even going to get into like a debate. Just the evidence we have of the times it has been tried and the times it has led to the socialist utopia shows that it will probably never lead to a socialist utopia because of the nature of either human psychology or the nature of government.
Okay.
The nature of government isn't to give up its own power, because people are self-interested. Stalin didn't want to give up his own power, so he killed everybody who decided to go against him. I mean,
Yeah.
this is the nature of human psychology, is to want to act in your own self-interest. Which, ironically enough, communism and communist governments are a complete and total destruction. They're a laboratory experiment which completely destroys the idea of an economy based on altruism. Because the communist governments are not altruistic in any way, shape, or manner.
Okay. So, just a couple things. Yeah, I admit that the definition of communism is kind of a utopia. So, in that sense, you kind of have a point. But the idea is that if you're doing the socialism bit right, then the communism just kind of writes itself into existence, which
Right.
sounds a bit weird. But really,
It
yeah.
sounds cultish. It sounds
I know,
like
I know,
it sounds like a religious prophecy that has never come true as of yet.
But the thing is, I mean, that argument kind of works if the socialism bit isn't as good, and we're like, oh, we just need to hold out for this not as good socialism bit to get, because we're saying that the socialism itself would be much better than the capitalism that we have today. We're just
Right.
saying, in theory, the communism bit should happen as well, and if it doesn't, then we'll happily still take the socialism.
So
I
your
mean,
argument
you know.
is that this socialism it's good, it's better than capitalism. Your like extra like selling point is that, hey, eventually maybe it'll lead to a utopia. But the thing is, you believe that this socialism is better than capitalism.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay, so why would you say that?
Well, because I just think that workers owning the means of production is preferable to private property, and I also believe that the idea of profit has led to a lot of, kind of not so great things. And I'm not saying profit doesn't have its upsides. Of course, competition and incentive, they're great things, but I don't think that you necessarily need profit to get those things. And so I think a lot of the problems that kind of have come about with capitalism today, like the imperialism causing problems in like the Middle East and etc., or the fact that we're essentially destroying our own environment for the pursuit of profit, that wouldn't really, I mean, I would hope happen under socialism. According to my own theory of socialism, these things we wouldn't really be seeing in a kind of socialist world.
Do you think that the Chinese government isn't imperialistic? I mean,
Would you say the Chinese government are even socialist? I mean,
well, they were at one point. I think when
I don't think they ever were, because the workers never owned the means of production. It's always been state ownership of the means of production.
Okay,
And the
so
thing is, they may have said they're communist, but it would only ever been in name. I mean,
well, all right. Can you name any government or any society that has ever had workers completely owning the means of production?
there have been, I think, kind of small groups where workers owned the means of production. Actually, around the time of the Russian Revolution, there were kind of sections among Russia where workers were owning the means of production. Unfortunately, Lenin broke that up, so um, we didn't really last long. But and then you've also got a kind of Rojava in the Middle East and Syria at the moment, where they're kind of working with a more communal aspect. So again, workers are very much involved in how things work there. So we've definitely kind of, I don't think we've had socialism on an entire nation scale, but we've definitely seen small examples of kind of socialism and worker control occurring, and from those examples we've seen that it actually works quite well, because Rojava, for example, they're actually pushing back ISIS and their territory. They have, for example, their gender equality is brilliant. They have an entire army of nothing but women, and considering that's in like the Muslim-dominated Middle East, you're gonna say that's impressive,
Well, yeah.
even if you disagree with the
I do
socialists.
actually think that a lot of what these are the Kurds that I believe this is the Kurdish people who are setting up trying to set up their own state. What they're doing in the Middle East is pretty good. I like it. I would actually think that if our government actually acted in its own self-interest, we would be backing them militarily. But
Well, actually, the US is arming them actually.
well, I think we should be doing more. I think we should
Oh
actually.
yeah, definitely. I mean, and
well, whatever.
there are loads of problems with
The
Java,
thing
but
is that you can actually set up. I'm not even going to say you can. There is a system set up where this socialist society or this socialist economy and the capitalist economy are working in competition with one another, and that's in capitalist societies.
are you talking about cooperatives?
Right, cooperatives. A specific corporation I can think of that I actually go to is Winco. I actually like them. They're pretty good. So I like going to
I was
Winco.
just about to bring them up.
Right. They are. I'm not quite sure if they're socialist enough. I'm not sure if they are actual like this Marxist talking point, but they are a pretty well-run, worker-run. They advertise as a worker-run organization. They're in competition with Walmart, and Walmart's beating them. So
Okay.
we can look at what we already have in capitalist societies, and why isn't socialism, this socialist style, these socialist style economies competing and outperforming these capitalist institutions? And I
Okay,
think,
that's an interesting question. But really, the thing is, when you have cooperatives and traditional companies running side by side, it kind of if you want the workers to have good conditions, and you kind of have to you kind of have to be whoever's more ruthless in the pursuit of profit is the people who's going to do well. So really, you're using like the profit as a measurement of how well they're doing. But the thing is, under socialism, we wouldn't have the competition between these worker-run kind of organizations, because that way it
Well-
means the workers essentially don't have to exploit themselves in a sense
Exploit
in order
themselves.
to.
Why
Well, yeah,
exploiting
because
themselves
right now
instead
that
of-
you have the CEOs exploiting the workers for the surplus value, but in cooperatives, in order
That's-
to keep
that's
up
a
with
Well,
the.
one
ridiculous-
even
that-
one
no,
conversation.
wait,
Well, no,
wait,
one
stop.
conversation that could be had would be how many Walmart employees are currently on governmental benefits as opposed to Winco employees.
Right. I mean.
Yeah, that's what I was
something-
getting at.
I'm completely willing to. If this conversation is going to be talking about the idea that there is theft in capitalist societies, yeah, there is, and I think that there should be some kind of government reform. But I want to go back to the statement that you just said, which is completely nonsensical. The workers in a socialist run corporation would be exploiting themselves. Is this
Yeah,
like how
so-
if a man and woman are drunk and they have sex with each other,
No,
they're raping each
no,
other?
no.
'Cause
No,
that's,
not a-
that's exactly what that sounds like. They're exploiting
That's
themselves.
well, I think you've misunderstood me. I mean, so my point is, if they have to be in a capitalist economy, they have to work around the capitalist economy, if that makes sense. So
Well,
it's
they don't have
yeah.
to. They could just go out of business.
well, is that really a realistic option? I mean,
It actually is a realistic option. They could not run very well.
so you could
and
just
they could go
not.
out
I
of
mean,
business. That happens
okay,
all the
so
time. All that
socialism can't work in capitalism then,
Well, then you
because
have,
that's it can't work in capitalism.
it
I mean,
can't
you've
work in
already
capitalism
said that.
because so this is what
Well,
we have.
no, you're saying that if you want to work, your option is to go out of business. That's not working at all. I mean, yeah.
Well,
I
it isn't
mean,
if you don't
sorry.
have. So let's set this up again so I can understand in depth what is happening in this nice little phrase that you happened. So, workers exploiting themselves. If a worker is a part owner of a corporation and they are voting in that corporation, how could they be democratically exploiting themselves? The word exploitation implies some kind of force or some kind of slavery. How could you be enslaving yourself if this is a voluntary transaction with an organization that you yourself are a part owner in? How could that exist?
Well, I wasn't really referring to slavery. I don't think that's really a logical thing to jump to. But basically, what I'm kind of mostly referring to is the fact that in a cooperative, when you're competing with other capitalists companies, you they are willing to be more ruthless in order to have more profit and therefore do better. And because a cooperative has to have the workers having more money essentially than the other one, so they're going to
are
make
you
more profit.
against
So
ruthlessness
what
or
I'm
are you
saying
against
is,
profit?
well, no, I'm in a sense both, I guess. But I
Okay.
mean, my
So
point is.
so
My
let,
point
let's
is
let's talk
that
about
the
this. So
ruthlessness is leading to the worst conditions for the pursuit of profit,
so
and
I'm
I'm
not
saying
I'm
that the
not
profit
going to
shouldn't be
argue.
what's
So I'm not going to
determining how successful they're doing.
So I'm not going to argue against capitalist institutions can be ruthless. They can. And the proper answer to that in an economic capitalist theory is unions, because unions are a form of collective bargaining. That is an institution which completely destroys the need for any kind of government intervention. And in fact, one of the things that I think Sweden does very well is unions. They don't have. I'm not 100% on this, but let me Google this.
All right.
Just
I mean, with unions, I mean, they're good, but they're not
yeah.
really like, as far as I'm concerned,
Sweden
the
doesn't
full
have a
solution.
minimum wage. It doesn't have a minimum wage because it doesn't need a minimum wage. Because
Yeah.
unions collectively bargain for the rights of their members so
then-
well that they do not need any government
No,
intervention.
that's great by all means. But I mean, then in America, you've got can't you have guys being fired if there are like rumors of people wanting to start unions? I mean,
Well,
you know,
and this is an argument.
I've only read these things on like
Right,
Reddit,
right.
so I can't
So-
really source that very well.
Well, let's. What
Well,
I'm
I
talking
can
about-
I can step in here and give some validity to that. I've seen it happen several times in places that are right to work states.
Right.
Exactly.
And-
so
and
you know,
I don't- I
unions they
think
don't really
that,
solve the problem. They're good by all means, but they again, even if you can get them in, which as we can see in America sometimes you can't, they don't really solve the whole problem. And they can
They
work.
actually
They
do
can make
solve the whole
workers'
problem
conditions
if they're
better,
done-
but ultimately the workers aren't running the company, and ultimately we're still in capitalism, and we're still having the pursuit of
okay,
profit.
so here's what unions are able to do. Unions are able to counter and completely destroy, or at least counterbalance, the sort of inherent ruthlessness of managers and owners of the means of production, right? So that's what they're able to do. So you don't need socialism. You have to have either intelligent workers or workers that have some kind of skill that are able to compete and bargain beneficially for their own interests, or you can have an organization which does so on their behalf. So this is so the ruthlessness inherent in capitalism actually has a solution in the capitalist model. You don't need
But
socialism.
would you say that unions have solved this? I mean, only in a
they
very select
can.
European countries, from what it sounds like.
Well, they can solve it. That's the thing, and I think that they have solved it in a number of different
Okay.
sectors, in a number of different cities.
I won't lie. I think unions would definitely make it better. I wouldn't say that they would remove the need.
They wouldn't
for
remove the need for profit, but the idea that you're against profit it really showcases both this messianic view, this cultish mentality, and a complete lack of understanding of basic economics.
All right.
So the first thing is there are companies that are based off of their brand as being this sort of like, we're good people. You come here and you're supporting nature, and these are like Starbucks.
Zeke actually spoke a lot about that. How Starbucks is meant to be some kind of genius company that makes you no longer feel bad for being a consumer. So
yeah, it's bullshit, but it's something that is a good competition. I mean, organic is a new thing. So the idea that this ruthlessness doesn't have an answer in the capitalist system is even if you don't take unions, that competition over brand recognition is also something that completely destroys the need.
Well, hold
for
on.
socialism
You're
or
assuming
economic
that
intervention.
this kind of telling people that you're doing better for the environment or whatever is actually working. I mean, because
Okay,
wasn't there
so
this
then
company that was saying, "Oh yeah, if you buy this from us, we'll give these like shoes to people in Africa," and then it's like you got the Africans over there saying, "Well, we don't need fucking shoes. Like, why are you doing that?" But
okay, so
everyone doesn't know better, so it's like they think, "Oh, great."
basically, the answer to the problem of ruthlessness in capitalism is twofold. So I already talked about unions, which is on the side of
Well, no,
workers,
it
which is collective
it
bargaining.
inhibits it, but it doesn't remove the inherent problems of capitalism. It makes
Well,
capitalism slightly better,
it
slightly more livable.
removes it,
But
it
I mean,
removes or it
it's like the whole
counters.
thing of charity. Charity, it doesn't actually solve the root problem. It just makes things slightly better. But ultimately,
Well, it
if you
removes or it,
you
it
know, if you
removes or
need to
it
keep on
counters it.
doing something, it doesn't actually to remove the problem. It just kind of delays it in a way. It just it does. I don't think
Well, I mean,
capitalism in
so
human face
this is
is really
based on
something.
this is based on the idea of pragmatism over perfection. So, in a pragmatic sense, if every single worker was completely educated, was bargaining effectively, we would not have the problem of ruthlessness when it comes to workers'
Are you
rights.
sure? Because I mean, employment
If
itself is something that drives workers to, compete for lower wages. Because if you don't have a wage, you can't eat. So
uh,
workers who are willing to work for less are essentially
well, I mean,
forcing others who are working to also work for less.
Well, I
I mean,
mean, then you have to talk about a standard of living. So this is an economic theory that most people on the left and a lot of people on the right, by the way, who want free trade, go fuck yourself. Free trade is stupid. So when you have a certain standard of living that is expected in your society, then you are going to try and live up to that standard of living and bargain for wages that match that standard of living. I can speak from experience in working at places that only hire people based on the minimum wage, or that employ people and try to undercut people. When you do that, you're getting the dregs of society. You're not getting anybody who's actually trying to like somebody who's like working, trying to support their kids, has a full marriage, and is this person who is again, like with unions, bargaining effectively for their own labor. You get people who
okay,
either can't bargain effectively because they have no skills or they haven't worked on themselves, or who don't know how to bargain effectively, who are like teenagers, right? So
okay.
the thing is that if this was perfect, if people were perfectly bargaining for their own labor in their own self-interest, we wouldn't have this problem. But people are not perfect. So I want to have a system which does not demand perfection from people, and which allows people who are either teenagers or felons or other people to be able to bargain in their own way and who aren't just, left out.
But surely that leads on to the whole thing of if you're born poor and then you in turn have a lower education, even if you're not a teenager or something, you're still going to have likely lesser skills, and therefore you have to, you can't
Well,
bargain as
there
well simply
is
because you were born into the kind of not as good a family as someone else.
so there's a
And then you
study
can say
that
they can pull themselves up by their bootstraps, but it's the whole thing of like if people either just don't know better because again they're not born into the families that kind of support them well enough and make them aware that they can better themselves, or if it's the kind of fact that people wanted to be rich, then they would just kind of do it. But I mean, to be fair, getting into the whole
so wait,
uh,
I'd like to be able to respond to that if that's okay.
okay, go for it. I
So
was going to say like I didn't want to get us into a whole other topic here, but
Well,
all
I
right.
mean, this is a part of the same topic. It's basically the entire idea of capitalism is
If you work hard, then you do well.
excuse me, the entire idea of communism, or this emotional
Oh,
argument that you're making, is that there are people out there who aren't able to make it, so we should do something to help them. Now,
uh,
I'm not
really, but okay,
against.
go on.
Well, I mean, that's like the basic thing is that there's this
Not
wrong
really,
in the
no.
world. Well, there's this wrong thing happening in the world, and we need to do something to help
That's not
people.
really the basis of communism, but
That's the
go on.
basis
I'm
for the
just,
emotional argument. Wouldn't you say that that's the emotional argument for communism? That
I wouldn't say communism is emotional, but It doesn't matter. This is semantics. Let's
Okay,
continue.
it's semantics. So there's this emotional argument that if it's not the entirety argument, it's the argument that you just made. So in part, it's a part of the argument. It's that there are people out there who are poor and we should do something to help them. That's terrible. So there was a study by, I believe, the Brookings Institution that showed that if you do 3 things in your life, you will not be poor your entire life. That is, you don't have sex before marriage. Okay? Well, excuse me, you don't have kids before marriage. You get a high school diploma, and you work full-time. Those are the 3 things you have to do. Only 2% of people who did those 3 things were in poverty. 2%.
Okay.
So that
Yep.
is a laboratory study which shows that the people who are in poverty are by and large people who are making bad choices. So poverty isn't this, oh, it's such a terrible thing. He's inflicted with this disease of poverty that is not his fault. It is largely the result of a person's own actions. So, you're trying to set up a situation where people are not responsible for themselves, or people
Not
don't
at all.
actually...
No.
That's
What
exactly...
I'm trying to say is that I'm not saying we should just help them and give them stuff for the sake of it. I'm not saying they're not responsible for themselves. I'm saying we need a society with equal opportunity, and the fact that yes, you can do things to get yourself to the same standard of living as a lot of other people, but the fact that you have to do them in the first place simply because of where you were born just doesn't really make sense to me when other people don't.
The fact that you have
So
to
it's like
do...
the fact
Well,
that some people can be born with inheritance and they don't have to...
What you just said is completely contradictory. So, first you
okay.
said the idea that they have to be responsible for themselves is completely fine. They should be. But the idea that they should have to do anything to help themselves is what I'm against.
No,
That's
you
exactly
misunderstood
what you
me.
said.
So what I'm saying is the fact that if they're born in certain families, they have to do more to get to the same point as someone else doesn't make sense
All
to
they
me.
have to do is those 3 things. Those
But
3
that's not
things.
really all they have to do. I mean, getting a diploma and working full time, they're kind of big things. And then, especially to someone who
Big
doesn't
things?
really educated on the subject, then sex before not having kids before marriage can, I don't know, be quite difficult. But my point is that
Okay, so the solution
my
to
point is
that
that
is
these
educating people.
obstacles that people have simply for being born in certain families, or
Oh,
these
wait.
advantages
These
that people have
obstacles, you keep
simply
on
being
mentioning
born in the same
these
family,
obstacles.
doesn't...
It's only 3. There's only 3 of them. 3 obstacles.
Yeah, you can't just write them off. Like, and it doesn't matter how many. There could be 1 or there could be 100. I'm saying they shouldn't be there in the first
So
place.
we have a society where there are only 3 obstacles. 3. And you're saying that these 3 obstacles are so terrible that we should destroy the entire society and institute communism. Now, each of these 3 options have a clear and easy thing that you can do to fix them. Number 1, you educate people. Like you said, poor people don't know that they shouldn't have sex before marriage. Really? Well, why isn't the solution to that educating them?
Of course, educate people
Okay,
by all means.
so
But then
you
it's the
don't
whole
need
thing of
socialism.
like, if you're... No, not at all. I mean, this is just one aspect of capitalism as well.
Okay,
I mean,
so
this
then
isn't
the
the
second
entire
thing is getting a
basis.
job.
But
So getting a full-time job. So the answer to full-time employment is socialism. Is that really what you... So
No.
even if you were to say that the government should intervene, the answer to full-time employment would be to have an
where
entire
did the
capitalist
government come into
society.
this? Okay,
Well,
so
I'm saying what I'm saying is that the first answer...
I'm not talking about the difficulty of these things. I'm saying that the fact that they exist, they shouldn't do.
Okay, so how are we going to stop these things from existing? What I'm talking about
Well,
is in a pragmatic
I
thing.
would say the way you get equal opportunity is through redistribution of wealth.
Okay, well, I'm going to say that the way that you can stop these 3 specific things from happening, these 3 specific things to stop poverty from happening, is you educate people to not have sex or not have children before marriage, or at least use a fucking condom. You provide for some kind of socialized institution which will better educate people, which I'm completely and totally for, by the way. Socialism, some forms of socialistic economy work, like sewage systems. That's technically socialism.
That's not socialist. Government does not equal socialism.
It's a small compound socialist economy where
It's not,
the people
but-
democratically elect for this economy to exist.
That's
as
not
the
that's not
people
socialism.
owning. That's such an argument of semantics. That's a ridiculous. Okay.
It is. I'm sorry. I'm really bad with my semantics, dude.
That is a ridiculous. I mean, it
But
really is. It is
you know,
practically the same
but
thing
it's
as
not. It's not
socialism.
socialism. It really annoys me when people just say government projects are socialism because it's
Well,
not in any means.
it
But
is
anyway, so
socialism.
finish your point.
Okay, so it's a government-owned, which technically means people-owned institution. Sewage is a people-owned institution. I'm perfectly for that. That's fine. That makes sense. It makes pragmatic sense. Okay. So the third thing that you have to do is full-time employment. Even if you wanted the government to do this, you don't need communism. You don't need a revolution. All you have to do is provide a job for everybody through some sort of government program. So those three things will inherently destroy the need for socialism or communism because it would destroy poverty. Or you could just have a really good economy. I mean, you could just have a really, really good economy like they have like really good employment in Germany because it's an exporting country and they have really good industry. You could just do that.
Okay.
So
so
these are three things
my
that
two
completely
issues.
destroy the need for communism.
Yeah. So my two issues with that. One, you're kind of missing my point by just saying, yeah, you can fix it, so it's easier for people to do it. My point isn't saying it's impossible for people to get out of poverty. My point is that people shouldn't have to get out of poverty. There shouldn't be poverty in the first place.
Okay, stop.
And
right
you're also
there,
saying...
Right there. People shouldn't have to do anything. That is implicitly, okay? That is implicitly and realistically and pragmatically saying people should have no responsibility for their own actions. That is exactly what you are saying. In any pragmatic sense.
That is, you are
exactly
completely misconstruing my argument, dude.
No, that is.
I'm saying that
exactly
there shouldn't be the poverty to get out in the first place.
And that right there is inherently saying people should not have any responsibility for their own actions because people are in
there are no
poverty.
actions that they're making to have no responsibility
there are 3
over
actions.
it.
I just named 3.
That doesn't make sense, dude.
I just named 3.
And my second point is that even if you were right here, the fact that people can get out of poverty, the fact that if you get a capitalist society where you work hard, you do well in life, that doesn't remove the need for socialism in any way, because socialism doesn't revolve around people being poor. That's not what it is at all.
Okay.
It's often a common misconception, because we were talking about earlier about how, I'm against things like profit and how capitalism is like destroying the environment and how capitalism is naturally expansive and that's actually detrimental, as we can see, and then also how capitalism is coupled with imperialism and how's that, led to things in the Middle East. So even though poverty and that stuff it is a factor, and we believe that redistribution of wealth will create equal opportunity, it's not the only point of socialism. So saying that refuting that one point removes the need for socialism is just absurd, really.
Okay.
But
so basically your entire argument is that capitalism has all of these bad things and that socialism would fix them.
Well, I mean, yeah, yeah.
So, is there a socialist society that has ever fixed them?
Well, no, but that doesn't mean the socialism itself couldn't.
I can name a capitalist society that's doing pretty good. I personally
think... Well,
think...
of course, you can name capitalist societies that are doing better than other capitalist societies, but the question is there a socialist society that's doing it now is irrelevant. I mean, that doesn't mean socialism couldn't do those things. I don't get what your point is.
So there has never been a socialist society that has been able to completely eradicate...
There's never been a socialist society, full stop.
Okay, so why do you think...
And now we're just getting back onto the point of, is it possible to even get to socialism? Okay. Which really is what we were talking about at the start of the... This is a nice circle round, isn't it?
So this is a very typical leftist argument, and I'd like to sum this up, what this arc we've gone through. It's incredibly typical. So I pointed out that the phrase that you said, that people should not have to have any kind of poverty, is basically saying in a pragmatic way that people should not have responsibility for themselves.
I
pointed out 3 actions that people do which cause them to have poverty. This is a study that demonstrates that there are only 3 actions that cause poverty. Okay?
You mean
these are the 3 that cause poverty. If you have children before marriage, that will cause poverty. If you don't graduate from high school, that will cause poverty. If you don't be employed full-time, that will cause poverty. 3 actions. And you're saying that people shouldn't have to deal with poverty. Those poverty are caused by those 3 actions. By and large,
Poverty
2%
is
of the population, 2% of people who do these things are in poverty. So your entire idea that people should not have to deal with poverty is based off of 2% of the population. We
No,
should
not at
destroy
all. I'm saying
this
I'm saying the
system is
fact that some
successful
people
for
do have to
90
do that and
this
some
is
people don't have to do that doesn't make sense, and it's
this
not
is
equal
successful
opportunity.
for
And
98% of society.
yeah, but the fact is that they
98%.
have to do it while others don't. The
And
fact is
so
that there are
fucking
some
what?
people
They
that have to
exactly
do
what
extra
you
stuff
say.
just to get onto the same level as other people who don't have to
Everybody
do
has
extra
to do
stuff,
these
and that
three
is
things.
just no,
Everybody
they
has to do
don't.
these
They
three
don't.
things. The only
People who are born into wealthy families don't have to do that. People who are born into middle class families don't have to do that,
Yes,
really.
I mean, the
And
middle-class families do.
it's
I
only
was saying,
people
middle
who are actually
class. You
born.
no. I don't know how it is in England, but in America, if you're born into a middle class family and you don't graduate high school, my buddy lives in a trailer park. He was born in a $500,000 house, dude.
Yeah, but
Well,
I mean,
I guess that
so the
depends
idea
on. I'm
is
not
that
saying people who are born into rich families can't fall into poverty. Obviously, it does happen, but normally it doesn't happen.
so
you know,
let's go through this again.
Well,
This-
I'd argue real quick. Let me get a word here. I'd argue the statistics are probably about the same. 2% of the people he's talking about, and between 1 and 2% of people that are born into such abject wealth that they can behave like that.
Well, hold on. Now we're changing different variables, and the whole thing becomes kind of irrelevant because now we're comparing the same thing
Well, what we're
among
actually
different
saying is that
among
98
people with different general
for-
wealthy.
so
So
for
that's
90%
you
of
can't
society.
make that comparison.
for 90% of society, this system is successful. 90%.
Okay.
90% of society, this system isn't
Yeah.
completely successful.
Again, you're missing my point, though. You are missing my point every
yeah,
single
your point
time.
is that you want perfection. The
No, my
system-
point is that I want equal opportunity.
Yeah,
My point is
there
that I
already
don't think
is
some
equal
people should have to do
opportunity to a
more than
certain
other
point.
people just to get to the same point. That doesn't make sense.
Okay, so you don't want people to be able to have any kind of situation which would make them more likely to be rich.
I'm sorry?
You don't want any situation where one person would be more likely to be wealthy than another.
Sorry, I need to comprehend what you're.
So you don't want any situation to exist where one person will ever have any kind of ability or an innate thing that isn't attached to their own work ethic that will make them wealthier than another person.
It depends how you define wealthiness. Kind of, I don't really see how that's related, but yeah, essentially, obviously, I don't think people. I
Okay,
think
so then you
I
think
believe that
intelligent
people should have the
people
same
should-
amount of wealth, but I
So-
mean, you
so
already know that.
think that intelligent people should
But
not
now,
be
now
able
you're getting to the point.
compete
I
better.
believe that two people who want to do the same thing. So, for instance, you got two people who want to be engineers. I believe that these two people should go through the same kind of obstacles to get to be an engineer, and then whoever's more naturally designed to be an engineer is going to be the engineer. But in the capitalist society, you can have it where people who are simply born into the right families, have their education lined up for them, have inheritance, have just things helping them along the way, are more likely to become the engineer than someone who's not, even if they're not more talented. That's my point about equal opportunity here.
Okay, so you don't want a wealthy person to be able to provide for their children.
Yeah, I just hate wealthy people, and I think their children should starve.
Well,
But
that's exactly what that would entail.
that's what I said.
Well, that's exactly what that would entail. Pragmatically speaking, what your moral
Hey,
equivocation
dude, I think we're going in circles
require.
here. I think you're not getting my point at all. I think we should change the subject, if I'm honest, because you're not getting my point about how I apparently want wealthy people to starve and apparently don't want people to be responsible. So I think
That's
it's just
exactly what
pointless
you're
staying
saying.
on this. It's not what I'm saying at all,
That
dude.
is
It's really
exactly what you're saying.
this
It's
is
the
my
fact
point.
that you can't
This is
see
why
that
we
and
shouldn't
you're not
stay on
letting
this
me
topic
argue
because
this.
you're just telling me what my
Well, I'm
own
trying to explain this to
so-
you, but you keep on trying
Yeah.
to change the subject. So what happened first is that I pointed out that what you're essentially saying is that people should not have to face any kind of responsibility for their actions because poverty is caused by an individual's actions. Okay? That's what my initial point was. And then you changed the subject
well,
to,
I mean, I would say that
and
poverty
then
is-
you changed the subject to, well, capitalism also is imperialist. It also does this. It also does that. That is an
that was me refuting your point about
that was
socialism being
typical
worthless or
moving
useless.
the goalposts. It was
No,
typical
no,
moving the
you were saying
goalposts.
that if you solve this one problem, socialism isn't needed. I was saying socialism spans a wider variety than just that one
I
thing.
was saying that socialism is not needed for solving poverty at all. Because
You were
like
saying
I said,
socialism wasn't needed at all.
for
That is what you
solving
said.
poverty. You changed
you
the
said-
subject. You change
You were
the
the one who
subject to
said,
everything
dude.
else. That is moving the goalposts. It is a typical argument, and now we're on the same kind of thing. So I'm saying, well, so what is necessary for you to stop any kind of inherently more optimal existence for somebody else? Well, that means that, inherently speaking, a rich person could not provide anything more to his children. Do you know that wealthy people who have like university degrees will use something like 10,000 more words around their children than poor people?
Well, that's because they've been educated.
Exactly.
I mean, what's your
So
point?
what is your answer
So
for that
poor people
inherent
shouldn't be
bias?
educated? Like,
Are you saying that
what are you
rich
getting
people?
at here?
What I'm getting is that to be able to make it so that this is a perfect system, okay? Because you don't want 90% of society to be able to succeed and 10% have problems. You want it to be perfect. To be able to do that, you have to make it so that parents cannot give anything to their children. That is exactly what you are saying.
And also that poor
Inheritance, yeah,
parents,
no, no,
and
no,
then
yeah,
also
no,
that
actually,
poor
that is what I'm saying.
parents,
I don't
yeah,
bullshit.
Okay,
yeah,
so
oh
you
yeah,
don't want
Yeah.
inheritance. You also
yeah,
don't
and
want...
also that poor people should not impose their poverty on their children, which means you have to take their children and have them raised by the state, or just arbitrarily raise
I'm
parents
sorry?
up out of
Whoa, whoa,
poverty.
whoa!
Exactly.
When
That
did
is-
I say that we were taking
Well, no,
away
no, we're
people's
talking
children?
about pragmatic solutions. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to straw man you. I'm talking about a pragmatic answer to the problem. Do you
Yeah.
have an alternative pragmatic answer? I'm not accusing
Yes,
you of anything, man.
redistribution of wealth.
Okay, so what about the person who is born in poverty and lives in a poor culture and is taught to not work for themselves? Should they be taken from their children? Should their children be taken from their parents?
Interesting. I don't
Or
know.
what
I
about-
I
what
wouldn't
about-
say so
what
because
about the
there are
example-
so many problems. I mean, with taking children away from their parents, it's not really
So-
something I've thought about
so
before.
what
But
about
the thing
the
is that there
ex-
wouldn't be, in my kind of utopian society, there wouldn't be poverty to be born into in the first place.
Right,
That's my point.
because people wouldn't have to have any consequences for their irresponsibility. People wouldn't have to be responsible
Not
for their
at all.
actions.
If people are being irresponsible, then they're
Then
not
there
going to
should
be.
be some
Then they're not
poverty
going to
then.
be able to do what
Then
they
there
want
should be
in
some
life. For
poverty.
instance,
Then
you,
there, if people
Hey,
have
you're
to be
saying there
responsible
should be
for their
poverty.
actions.
You're saying there should be poverty.
I'm
Poverty
saying
is a
that-
good thing that we should have.
I'm saying
Is
that
that what
people.
you're saying?
I'm saying that people should be responsible for their own actions. If
I'm
their
saying
actions
obviously
cause
people need to be
poverty,
responsible,
that's
but
their
in different
actions.
ways than starving to death and ruining their children's lives as well.
If somebody,
I'm saying that for instance, if people are irresponsible with their actions, then they can't do what they want to do in life. So, for instance, if you have a dream job that you want to do, but then you turned up to work drunk like every day, people are just going to turn around and say, "Hey, you can't do this anymore. Go do something else," and then you're not going to be able to do what you want in your life.
Oh,
So,
yeah, because-
obviously, there are consequences to your actions. And saying that just because there's no wealth or poverty to be had among people, that means there's no consequence. It just doesn't make sense, dude.
Yes,
Because
it
you've got to
actually does.
also take into
So-
account different variables.
So the idea is that the entire society and the entire civilization should support these people who do bad actions. Because the usual response, all right, in the state of nature, if you lived on a fucking island, which is why this argument is basically based on, again, this fallacious assumption of economic stability is a human right. No, it isn't. Go on a fucking island. Can you tell nature that water and food is your human right? Nature will fucking laugh at you and you'll be dead in a week. You have to work. You have to provide for yourself. You have to have some consequences for your actions. All right?
Why do you have to work and have to provide for yourself, though?
Because otherwise
Because
you'll fucking die
communists
if you live on a
because
fucking island. Nature
we're
is
not living on an
oppressing you.
island, though.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
the
so-
whole point of
so
human
here's the thing.
advancement.
So
the whole point
this
of
is
human
what you're
advancement that we
saying.
don't have to work. Communists
You
want
don't have to
unemployment.
work.
Yeah, that's literally the goal, the end goal. The end goal is that no one has to work if they don't want
Right,
to.
no
That is
one
that
has
is
to
what we're
work if they
aiming
don't
for.
want to.
Because in capitalism,
So there
unemployment
should
is
be
seen
no
as a bad thing.
responsibility. So
But
people
if
should have
you
no
don't have to
responsibility for
work,
their
then
actions.
why should you? There's no reason. That working for the sake of working makes sense. So surely the end goal of every society should be to create some kind of utopian world where people don't actually have to work and worry about starving to death or getting their food or something.
So what you were
So
saying
then
was
you're like a
slavery.
technocratic futurist. I
So-
mean, really, you'd have to go towards that path. You'd have to go down the
I don't
path
actually
of
know what that term-
increased automation, increased
All right, so
self-regulation.
let me
Capitalism
spell this out. This is the
definitely
same
about-
argument that I have with people who say that healthcare is a human right. All right, it's a stupid argument. When you say that healthcare is a human right, you are implying, not even implying, you are saying essentially that doctors and nurses are slaves.
That the slaves. Oh, I love that.
Exactly. That is literally what you are saying.
Okay,
You are
so
saying that
they don't
doctors and nurses are
have to be
slaves.
doctors if they don't want to be. Like,
Oh,
what?
so then nobody's gonna be a doctor. They're gonna fucking leave
Just because they don't want to treat certain
because they
types of
don't want to
what?
be slaves.
That's not what, dude. Okay, so why do you think they're slaves?
Okay, so if you say that healthcare is a human right, you are saying that this doctor and this nurse has to give their product, okay, their work to the world for free. That's what you're saying, essentially. If it is a human right, then they have to give it up. So, if economic stability is a human right, that means that everybody else who is working has to give up their economic stability for the person who isn't. They have to be slaves. So you are creating a situation where the laziest asshole in the society has the rest of society enslaved to him, providing for him.
This is where you're getting confused with the whole doctor analogy, dude. So basically, if someone wants to be a doctor, they have to treat everybody, okay?
For free.
But at the
So
same
slavery.
time, they don't have to be a doctor. They don't have to treat anyone. So they can
nobody's
treat
gonna be a
everyone or no
doctor.
one. That's not what slavery is.
That is so.
People
if
are going to
you-
be doctors because they enjoy being doctors. I mean,
alright,
if you,
so
it's pretty fucking
is an
hard to get
argument-
through things like medical school
So
if you just
this
hate
is an
what you're
argument
doing.
that you've had. You've put this point out a number of times, and it is so fallaciously wrong. So fallaciously wrong. So in communist systems, in socialist systems, where people get to do what they want, where people get to be doctors, they don't have to be doctors, but there's no reward for being doctors. Doctors, lawyers, engineers, scientists, all these peoples will just fucking leave. They will leave.
Okay, so this is the incentive argument. Then
This
okay,
is-
so
and
basically
let me
my
basi-
argument
let-
is
let me-
that
before you
people
get into
enjoy
this-
doing things.
Before you get into this prescribed, like this textbook response that you're trying to do to every single argument, when this happens, people leave, all right? You can't equivocate about that. That means that people do not want to be slaves. People who want
not
to
what
be a
slavery is.
doctor.
You've got to stop using that word, dude,
it
because it's
is
just
slavery.
so relevant
It is
in this
It is
context.
so incredibly relevant. If someone
not.
is a doctor, they have to be a slave. That is what you're saying.
By the way, I just thought we'd point out, yeah, we're approaching 1 hour, so do we want to kind of wrap this up soon, or?
That's fine. I think we can both make like our ending statements. So if somebody wants to be a doctor, they have to be a slave. This means that people who want to be doctors will fucking leave. That's what happens.
Mm-hmm. Is that your argument?
It's not even an argument. This is demonstrable fact.
Okay.
This
So
is what happened with the USSR.
my point is that if you're a doctor or a scientist, you're doing that because you genuinely enjoy doing that.
But
Okay,
you don't
can't
want to be
really
a slave,
get through.
so you'll leave.
It's not slavery.
It
Hey,
is
we've already gone
slavery.
through this.
No,
this
it is
slavery.
slavery. It
So
is
this is just going to go in circles. So I should just we just leave it.
Well,
here
yeah, we should
because
just leave it
we're
because you can't argue against that. All you're saying is
Well,
it's
I
not
already
slavery.
did though. I already refuted that point, and now we're
Refuted
going
it
back
how?
to it.
What did you do to refute it?
I said that you don't have to do it.
Okay,
And then
if
you
you
said
are a
people don't,
doctor-
and then you went back to the slavery argument again.
If you want
okay?
to be a doctor, you have to be a slave.
No. Again, but you're just saying the same.
This is exactly
you're
what
just saying
you're
the same thing.
But this is exactly what you're saying. You're saying you don't have to be a doctor. You don't have to be a doctor. But if you want to be a doctor, you have to be a slave. You don't have to be a doctor.
That's not what slavery is.
That is
That's
exactly
not what slavery
giving
is. Oh my
working
god,
for
dude!
free.
Slavery is saying, "Hey, you're gonna work for me. You don't have any other choice." That's what it is. It's just,
So
like
if
your other
you-
choice is death. That's you know. Oh, I mean,
That
if
is
we
a-
want to
listen,
go by that,
if
then
a doctor has
most
to
things
work,
in capitalism are slavery. I mean, it's like going by that definition, dude. But
if a
again,
doctor-
seriously,
slavery is working and not having the fruits of your own labor. Somebody else
is
steals
that
from you the fruits of your own
slavery?
labor.
Slavery is working without any other choice and being forced to work against your will.
Right? So you're forced to do that.
So if I'm
there's
saying you have a choice to do
implied.
that, then it is your will.
So
Like,
there's a
dude.
choice to do that. There's a choice to not be a doctor, right? But
Yeah,
if
so
you
it's
want,
not slavery.
So if you want to choose to be a doctor, you have to be a slave. You have to choose slavery.
Oh, we just defined the definition of slavery.
Yeah, and
and then
your
you're just saying-
definition is bullshit because what I'm saying the definition of slavery, you're trying to define this away so that there is no inherent.
So how about we say, yeah, they're slaves, but by going by your made-up definition, which isn't actually slavery, so it just doesn't.
So,
Like-
so if you are a doctor and you provide your services to the public, the government will force you to provide those services for free. So if you want to do any work, you will be forced to provide them for free. That is slavery.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. Yes,
like I said, we're just going in circles, dude.
Because you're just denying that.
Yeah, because I've already told you what slavery is, and you're just saying it's not that.
The government is forcing a doctor to give.
Why is the government involved? Like, again, you obviously, even in today, like, isn't the Hippocratic Oath or whatever how you pronounce it, is that you have to,
that's an ethical thing. That's an ethical thing. Okay.
Yeah. Well, then by your definition, that is also slavery.
No, it isn't, because there's nobody forcing you to do that. In your communist society,
there's no one forcing you to do this as well, though. You have the option to just not.
Oh, exactly. So nobody's going to be a doctor.
And yeah, again, now we're just
because everybody just leaves.
If you want to...
This isn't even an argument. This is a demonstrable fact. There is a laboratory experiment with the USSR. When you are not given the ability
Okay, so the USSR wasn't, communist or socialist or anything, so it's you can't use it as an example.
So the USSR isn't an example of Marxism. So this
of course not. No, we went through this at the beginning of the talk, dude. You remember when I defined socialism, communism, the USSR, either of those things? And this is the exact reason why Marxism is a cult. Because when anybody ever tries to put up this, any example of where Marxism has gone wrong and try to hold you accountable to it, you say, well, that's not really what I believe. That's not real Marxism. It's like the same fucking bullshit that people would say, well, human sacrifice has never given rain. Well, that wasn't real human sacrifice. It's bullshit. So I've given a definition, okay, and then there's something that quite clearly is not that definition, and then you're saying you're a cult. So I said that socialism is where the workers control the means of production. In the USSR, the state controlled the means of production. So how you can just then say, oh, then socialism can never work, it's just, it doesn't make sense. I mean, you also have to,
what I'm saying is that
if you want to get into the argument, of why the USSR failed, then we can do that, because it's a complicated topic, but I can go through it if you want to. But ultimately, you can't look at the USSR for faults in socialism. You can only look at it for faults in how to get to socialism, in which there are faults, yes, of course. And that's one of the good things about the USSR, because now we can analyze what happened, and we can go, okay, what the fuck happened here, and then improve that the next time around. So, all right.
So in the USSR, doctors are not allowed to get the fruits of their own labor. Would you say that's a correct statement?
I'm not sure how exactly it works.
Doctors aren't able to have someone pay them for their work.
I'm assuming I would have thought they would get paid. I mean, because they still had currency in the USSR, and they still had things you had to buy to eat. So yeah, they would have got paid. So I don't really see where you're going with this.
All right. So in the USSR, though, doctors weren't paid more for their work than anybody else. They were all paid the same, weren't they?
I do not know.
Yeah, off the top of my head, to be honest.
I can't say either way if they were or not, if I'm honest.
So, all right. But there is this laboratory experiment that we have with the USSR where this was tried. All right?
Yeah, so of course. And yeah, like I said, you can point out...
You could say that it failed, but the one thing that is inherent is that people with more skills, like people who were doctors and people who were engineers, were not given the ability to sell their fruits on the open market. They were not given the ability to have the fruits of their own labor. That's generally said to be true, in a general way.
Okay,
we can equivocate about the specifics either way. So after that happened, they left. Because people
Because didn't the USSR actually win the space race and stuff? I mean,
yeah.
So I mean, if you want to say that scientific improvement was stifled under the USSR, well then you can't really, because they actually made huge scientific improvements. Because again, I don't support the USSR, but if you're gonna say that the USSR didn't have scientific improvement, or the USSR system stifled it.
You're changing the subject again. You're moving the goalposts. You're moving the goalposts. I said that in the USSR, people with these skills left. You're saying, well, they made people into space. You're moving the goalposts. I said that doctors, engineers, scientists, all these people.
Maybe some people left. I don't know. I'm going to be perfectly honest here. I don't know exactly how the USSR ran with that. So yeah, let's say people left. What's your point here? Because even though people left, they still did well in those fields with their medical care and their scientific innovation, because compared to how the USSR was before the revolution and then after, you have to say that they definitely improved from the feudalist system that they
Right.
had.
Yeah.
Well,
Just
the
like
feudalism and
Islam.
capitalism hybrid that they had.
Just like
So
Islam gives women more freedom in the 7th century A.D. That's a really terrible equivocation. And again, you're moving the goalposts.
I don't see how. You're saying that under the USSR,
So maybe
the
communism is better than
scientists and the
feudalism.
doctors.
They left
Well, I
because
hope
they
it's
didn't
better
want to
than
be.
feudalism. I hope capitalism is better than feudalism, dude. I
Sure,
mean,
fine.
like, what's...
So the idea that communism was better than feudalism, so we should try communism. You're moving.
But you're saying the
goalposts.
USSR is communist. Like,
You-
dude, come on.
It is.
It's state capitalist. It's state capitalist. And I don't even think state capitalism works that well.
All right.
I
So-
only think that at maximum you need state capitalism for a very brief amount of time to stabilize a country after a revolution so people can, like, eat and shit. But,
So all of these. So
No,
in your,
so
in
my
your
point
perfect
here.
society,
So what
where-
your argument is that in the USSR, the doctors and the scientists didn't get paid as much as they could in a capitalist society, so they left, and that would imply that therefore their scientific progress or their medicalness, I don't know the
No,
term
that
there,
wouldn't.
would have
I'm
stifled.
not implying
but it
again.
did.
You're moving the goalpost. You're also talking about something that, frankly, you can't know and I can't know because neither of us are scientists and neither of us are experts on the USSR. I would say that it's probably true that the USSR did not have as good science as the United States, because if you look at the cars the USSR made, I mean, it was the same fucking car they had in the 1970s that they were producing in the 80s, in the 90s.
Well,
And
I don't really
before the
think it's
fall of
worth
communism.
debating this because we both just admitted we don't really know the details
Right,
of the
you're
USSR.
exactly right. But what we can say is true, what we've both agreed on the facts, is that these people left. That's a demonstrable historical fact, that brain drain happened. People were fleeing East Berlin as much as they can. That's why they built the Berlin Wall. To keep people in, not to keep people out. So,
Okay.
that's what happened in the USSR because they weren't allowed to compete and have the fruits of their own labor. People want to have the fruits of their own labor because they don't want
And that's
to be
what socialism
effectively-
advocates for.
They don't want to be effectively enslaved.
That's exactly what socialism advocates for,
That's
dude.
ridiculous.
Because under capitalism, you don't get the fruits of your own labor. The fruits of your labor are taken by a capitalist.
Well, I mean, the thing is that the capitalist owns the means of production. That means of production is
Exactly.
his, so that's his labor and that's his.
So you don't own you don't own the fruits of your labor then under capitalism, but you
See,
do under
this
socialism
is
because
such a
you own the
huge
means of
irony.
production.
This
So,
is such
dude,
a-
you've just kind of advocated socialism accidentally there. I think a bit.
This is just a huge ironic. This is a huge ironic loop. So you want people to own their own means of production, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So to do that, you have to create a civilization. You have to create a revolution that will steal from everybody the means of production and redistribute it.
Yep.
And afterwards, you will have to continuously steal from people forever to continuously redistribute the means of production so that nobody is ever able to have the fruits of their own labor.
Okay, so that last point, what? Like, can you elaborate on that?
Sure. So when you have this utopia,
Mhm.
how are you going to stop someone from being incredibly more wealthier than everybody else? Someone who has more talent. Somebody who's naturally
There's
better
no
at
wealth for
making-
them to get in the first place.
So there's no currency.
Yeah, well, no, even if there was currency, I mean, there's no way that they can get wealthier because there's nothing that they can get that other people don't.
Okay, so what about the barter system? So
What about it?
we're living under the barter system where there are people who are the naturally better people in their own fields. There's a best cobbler, there's a best vodka maker, there's a best at everything else. So somebody comes out and he invents this new system. It's the best thing everybody's seen. It's the new fucking iPhone, all right? He's the only one who knows how to make it. He's the only one who can make it, and he's the one who can make it best. So, how are you going to stop him from getting everybody else to give him the most stuff? Because everybody else is demanding his one item that he's made.
I
So
would
who's
argue
gonna get
that
the
could
most stuff?
never happen
Why?
Because creating things that everyone wants or huge innovations is not something that one person does. You need an entire group or an entire society to do that. And once you have an entire group or entire society to doing that, no one person controls that thing. So
Okay,
that's
so
just
let's say it's a small group. It's a small group who
but
controls
let's
this one
but
thing. Because
okay.
it's a small group who
So let's
controls this one thing. So
So
what's going to
let's
keep
say
them from
okay
being the richest
let's
people?
say that you know, this small group comes out with the cure for cancer, and they're not going to give it up, and only they know how to make it. Then in that case, seeing as they're intentionally hindering the progress of society for their own gains, which again I think this hypothetical example is extremely unlikely to happen, but I admit there is a very small chance it could happen. So we'll say, let's say it does. Then you would just have to flat out use force, okay? And there is nothing really wrong with that if they are intentionally hindering the progress of humanity with
Right.
something like, you know, the cure for cancer or something like
Right.
that. Because it's just, yeah, there's again, I think it's extremely unlikely to happen. But
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
I
okay.
guess.
So it's extremely unlikely to happen. Whatever. But with this equivocation
So wait.
aside,
Out of curiosity, if a man invents a new means of production, how does he capitalize on that labor? How is he
Who
compensated
says he
for
has
having
to
invented that?
capitalize? Who says he has to be compensated? I mean,
so he's not going to be compensated for his own labor.
well, no, I guess.
Okay,
Okay,
so there we go.
there's
That
this-
is theft.
It's not
It's theft. It's
theft
theft. It
because
is
there's nothing.
theft.
Who's taking this?
The society. The entire
The
society.
society. So, like, but he also has access to it. So,
Okay,
and
so
he has
he
access
has-
to everything everyone else makes.
Right.
So, you
So
know,
if
there is
somebody
no
makes-
one thing that he
so
has.
if he invents this one item, that is inherently his. So let's. I'm going with this hypothetical bullshit situation where currency has ever happened. Which, by the way, monkeys have currency. They did an experiment where they gave this item that worked as
So we should
currency
base our society
to
on
monkeys.
on monkeys. Okay, I think that's irrelevant.
That's a
Like,
ridiculous equivocation, and you're just trying to point score at this point. That's absolutely ridiculous. What I'm saying is that
well, I don't. I
what
think
I'm
I don't.
saying,
I think
human
just because
psycho-
monkeys do it. I mean, you know, monkeys also rape each other, but like it's just, you know.
Really. You're just. This
Well,
is
I mean,
what
I
you're-
assume they
what you're
do.
doing-
I mean,
what you're doing right now is just a ridiculous form of point scoring, and it is a manipulation of what
no, I'm just pointing out how
No,
this
it's
example.
a ridiculous point scoring exercise that you're doing right now.
No,
What
I'm just pointing out
what
how
I'm
it's a
saying-
relevant thing that you're bringing
What
up.
I am saying is that human psychology is based on evolution, right? We're related to monkeys, so our psychology is going to be similar. So it is a natural state of affairs in animals that act similar to us, in monkeys, to have currency.
It's irrelevant if it's natural or not. Just because it's natural doesn't mean it's good. It doesn't matter what's.
But if you go against what is natural, you have to have a good reason for it. And if you do go
Okay,
against
so-
what
so-
is
so
natural,
we should-
there is a point that you are going to go against human nature. You are going against human psychology, and and it is going to act against the benefit of the human species.
Of course, though, I don't believe human nature is even a thing. So,
Well, you're ridiculous. Human nature isn't.
do we want to wrap it up here, dude? Because it's really getting on now, and I have stuff to do tonight. So,
Really?
well, yeah. I mean, sorry, we have been going for like 2 hours almost. So, well, an hour and a half actually.
Right.
But I mean, yeah. I mean, you said we wanted to go for like 30
Yeah, but
minutes. and
this has been.
I have other stuff planned. This is like.
This has been fun. So, is there anything else?
It
you
has
wanted
been.
to
I have
end this on?
genuinely actually been enjoying myself. So yeah.
No, I've been enjoying this too, but I just I find this an incredibly ironic thing. So, your idea is that capitalism effectively is a form of theft because people having any kind of profit is inherently theft.
Yes.
So
yeah.
your idea is to make a revolution which will steal from everybody the ability to sell their goods on the open market, which is a form of institutionalized theft. And then you would have to create a totalitarian government where a use of force is inherent in stopping any group from asking for the results of their own invention.
Why
or the
is
fruits
that?
of their
That's
own
you
labor.
would need a government to do that.
You
I mean,
said that you
saying
would
that's
require
a
the use of
government.
force.
Yeah, saying that's a government is like saying any mob formed to do anything is a government, which obviously it's not.
That's called mob rule.
Yeah, that's not a government
That
though.
is a government. That's actually
That's not a
form-
government.
That's called direct democracy. It's
Okay.
called mob rule. That is a
Okay,
government.
okay, we'll say that's a government then. Okay, it's a weird definition of government, but okay. If that's your definition of government, then yes, it would be a government. But okay, we have different definitions. That's fine. But no, continue. No.
So this is mob rule then, okay? So I mean, the thing is that every single politician throughout history has warned us against mob rule. I mean, they've warned us that this is a bad thing and that it inherently leads to some kind of destabilization of society, or it is, in fact, the effect of destabilization of society, because it is a visceral expression of human emotions gone wild, ability to express themselves on any individual without recourse. So
Of course, no.
that is exactly what mob rule is. You're setting
No,
up that's
not.
what every single that's what
That's
the political philosophy
stereotype
says.
of a bunch of people going crazy in the street is. It's not a
So
group
you-
of people
so-
enacting something on another group of people. Well,
group
no,
of
sorry,
peop-
it
a
is,
group
but
of
it doesn't
people
have to be a
enacting
group of
a
people.
Okay,
already,
wait. Let's
like,
stop the
smashing everything
ideological.
up.
No, real quick. Let's stop this back and forth ideologically. Carr, have you ever interacted with large groups of people before?
Wow, that.
I'm not
oh.
being mean. I'm being serious. I did
No,
Occupy
no, dude, I'm
rallies.
joking. I'm joking. But sorry.
No, I did
how-
Occupy rallies. That's why I'm asking. Do you know how these people behave? How large groups of people behave? Because it's not
Oh
great.
yeah. No. I'm saying that a group of people enacting something on another group of people doesn't necessarily have to be the stereotypical on the streets being violent and just.
Well, of course, it doesn't necessarily have to be, but it tends to be.
Well, if it's unorganized.
Okay,
yeah.
so wait. So you are setting up a situation where organized government cannot happen in this
No,
hypothetical
because the
thing.
government needs a continual.
So if it is an
purpose.
unorganized mob, there we go. It's mob rule. It's
Okay,
riots every night.
it
from
is,
anybody- any
but it's
group
not
of three-
rioting. Like
Any group of 3 people who want to get together and do something
you're
can just do
just
whatever.
you're putting on the connotations that come with
So
mob rule,
will
and you're
criminals
assuming
not
them to be true.
exist? Will criminals not exist in this utopian society?
Oh well, of course they would.
Okay, so how are you going to deal
I mean,
with it?
I would say a lot less than they do in capitalists, but
All right, sure,
yeah,
fine.
no, criminals would certainly exist.
So what would you do to stop them?
Oh, well, you need some kind of communal judicial system.
Some kind
Drink.
of government.
What?
So you need some kind of government.
Yeah.
No, that's not
A
necessarily.
communal judicial system is a government.
Okay, calm down.
That is a government. How can you?
It
have
might
your
be.
head-
You could argue it's one of the tools of a centralized government, but on its own,
It is a government.
it doesn't.
Do you have no fucking idea what governments have looked like throughout history? Do you? I mean, the Roman government was a form of direct democracy where only the people who were in walking distance of Rome could actually vote in this organized empirical thing. In fact,
Okay.
these communal judiciaries that you're talking about was a direct arm of the government, which was used to impose
Yeah,
political
exactly. It's
will.
an arm of the government. It's
So
a tool
it is
or
a
organ
government. It is
of
a
the government.
part of government.
No, it is the part. It doesn't just because there's a part doesn't
This
mean
is
it's the actual.
It is a every single part of government is a government.
It's like
It's
if
a
I
form of
get your
government.
arm and then say your arm is a human. It's just, no.
Okay, but how do you stop that branch from becoming a government? How do you stop it from
Stop.
forming
That's,
its own
that's a
government?
fallacious argument because a judiciary would be. Do you know judges? Fucking Jews were ruled by judges. That's what the Book of Judges is about. I mean, seriously, the idea. So, in modern society, we have 3 branches of government: the judiciary system, the legislature, and the and the fucking shit. I'm having a brain fart right now. I'll cut this part out so it doesn't make me look stupid. and then the fucking shit, the executive branch. Those 3 branches are different forms of government that were combined through political will and through political philosophy to be the best form of divided government. If you divide those 3 up, they are still forms of government on their own. There's an executive, which is a king, a despotism, okay? There is a judiciary, which is another form of government. It would effectively be a kingship. Whoever is a judge would be the executive, because he would decide what is or isn't law. Then there's a Congress. That's direct democracy or representative democracy. These 3 things, even when separate, are governments. A judiciary would be a government, even if it's separate.
Okay. Well, I disagree with that last point.
Well,
but I mean,
you disagree.
Okay.
Do you have any argument against it except I disagree?
Okay, well, I already said just because I don't think because it's just one part that makes it
So
an
you
entire
just
government,
don't
because an
think
entire
so,
government
and that's
is
your argument.
centralized,
So your
and an
argument
entire government has multiple tools at its
is
disposal. That it
centralized. Have you ever read any kind of history about the type of governments that have existed? The Mongol Empire was not was centralized in the head of Genghis Khan, who was on a fucking their entire society was in movement. They were a
Yeah.
nomadic society. Their government wasn't centralized in any one place. Is that
Well,
not a
I
government?
would call
Is
it
that
an
not-
actual government then.
So you would call it a government?
I just said
at
I
that
wouldn't.
point. You wouldn't call the Mongol Empire a government?
I'm not too read up on the Mongol Empire, just on the
Okay.
information you've
So
just given
your
me.
entire
I
argument.
just-
So the entire argument is basically this puerile ipse dixit, that I don't think so. I disagree. You don't actually have an argument against a judiciary being a government. You're just saying I don't think it's a government. I don't think it is.
Well, you can
all
call it
you're
a government, but it doesn't change the actual. It's the whole. It's more semantics, if anything. You can call it what you like, but the actual system doesn't change. I mean,
Okay, fine. So this government that you're not calling a government would have to be able to express totalitarian control over an individual, over any individual who decided to want to sell his labor. So if any one person ever decided, you know what,
Dude,
I
the
want to
answer
be
is
paid.
yes.
I want to
well,
be paid.
yeah. Sorry, I just dropped something there. Yeah. So anyone wants to sell their labor. Well, I'm saying that this example of people wanting to sell their labor in the example you gave is just so uncommon. It's not.
That happens
it's,
every single fucking day in a capitalist
Well,
society.
in capitalism.
So
but
how many
I'm proposing a
capitalists are
completely
going to have
different
to
system.
die for your system to exist?
Well, hopefully none. But
So
I mean,
are they
that's
just going
that's
to
a
go
separate-
away? Are you going to brainwash them?
The capitalists. I mean, well, so in the revolution, when you overthrow the current system, you essentially just take their land and wealth, redistribute it equally.
And of course, if they
then-
fight, you have to kill them.
Well, yeah,
Of
but
course. So how many capitalists afterwards who are going to try and still be capitalist and sell their labor, or any new person?
okay,
These people
so that's
still have the ability to
one of
create
the
things, right?
one of the
Are you gonna have to
roles
kill
of
them?
the state that's set up initially after the revolution. So as I said, the state under capitalism.
Naked. You know that's where the re-education camps come in.
Right. They're just going to be re-educated, and
gulags,
they're going to
yeah.
naturally agree with socialism.
No, I'm saying that much like how capitalism, the state under capitalism oppresses the working class, under socialism, for the initial part of socialism, the state would have to oppress the ruling class or the bourgeois. And then they would only have to do that for as long as the bourgeois have power. As soon as the bourgeois' land and wealth has been redistributed, they no longer have power, and they're essentially just normal fucking people.
So this is again a textbook response, a pre-written. It sounds pre-written, to be honest, but
Well, yeah, I have
you
had to go
don't
through this
understand
time,
what
dude.
goes into making a corporation. And honestly, I think this is probably due to Karl Marx being an unemployed piece of shit his entire life. Neither did he.
Nice ad hominem.
The reason why CEOs, or why these inventors and why these small groups of people make more money, is because they are able to create new items. Nobody wanted the iPhone until Steve Jobs put on a fucking sweater. You could say that he was a piece of shit, right? But he was really good at making people want an iPhone. He was really good at that, all right? He was really good
Yeah.
at making people want things and then buy things. He was really
What's
good
your
at
point?
making things that people wanted. So,
Well,
if you
actually, he
took-
didn't
if
technically
you
innovate
took-
anything, but
right,
you know.
But the people who were in Apple, who were all led by Steve Jobs.
No, I
all
mean
did
like
the same
Apple
shit.
as a company, any of their ideas
So
are
if
basically
you
be done
took
before.
Apple away from Apple, the people would still be able to make an iPhone or invent whatever you wanted. So what is going to keep them?
Sorry. Could I just come back to the point where I said Steve Jobs didn't do something, but
Well,
then the people
and then
in
I
Apple
answered,
they
so
did.
Steve Jobs
So
was
I am
leading.
saying that the people in Apple who are doing stuff, they should be the ones controlling the company and not Steve Jobs.
Okay.
That's my argument.
All right. So what is to keep?
But again,
the people,
dude, sorry,
what is to keep
I
the people
really-
in Apple from making a new iPhone after the revolution and selling it for profit?
Because there's no, they can't. We're going back to the same argument because there's nothing that they can gain from other people because wealth has been redistributed.
Right,
Again,
but
we're going back to
that
the
wealth
same
has been
argument.
redistributed, but they can still collect that wealth from all the people. They still have some form of wealth. Even though it's redistributed, they can still sell things on this market or whatever market they create, an underground market, to get each individual person who has $5. Let's say wealth is redistributed, everybody has $5. One of those dollars will now go to the new Apple that they create.
Okay, but also two things. First off, trade itself isn't capitalism, and second, this accumulation of wealth has to be continuous. Okay, there can't just be a one-time thing that they make this new thing that everyone wants and everyone's willing.
This is Apple we're talking about. They know how to make new shit that stupid people will buy. Okay.
That's because they have good marketing.
They will continuously make new things that people will buy. So these people who all have $5, they will continuously put $1 up to Apple, and then that group of Apple people will be the richest people in the world. What are you going to do to stop that?
Okay, so assuming that they are unwilling to give access to these things, to these amazing things that they're inventing, then yeah, I guess we just go back to the force argument.
Exactly.
But dude,
so this is a situation.
I'm sorry. I do have to kind of wrap things up here. Again,
right.
I
have
stuff
one
to do.
final statement, and basically you've proven it.
I'll get a final statement in as
So
well.
a final statement. So basically, this entire argument from you, 90% of our society works under capitalism. 2% of society is in poverty because of decisions that they didn't make. While maybe 1% of the society on the top is rich because of decisions that they didn't make. Or 10%, whatever you want to say. For 90% of people, this works. But you want to steal everything, not just from the top 10%, but from everyone, and redistribute it. And then create what has to be a totalitarian government that will continuously steal from every single person who wants to have the fruits of their own labor forever. And you think this is justifiable because I think so, or I feel so, or I don't like it. That is the essential irony of Marxism, that in order to fight capitalist theft, you are institutionalizing a totalitarian government which will continuously steal from anyone who invents something new or wants to actually have any kind of profit or wants to have any kind of fruit for their own labor forever. To combat theft, you want to institutionalize theft. That's ridiculous. It really is.
All right. Is that your closing statement? I mean, obviously, I won't try and argue that because the closing statement.
That's my closing statement.
Cool. So I'll just say. I mainly just wanted to, in today's talk, highlight the differences between the mainstream left that we have today, like the liberals and the social justice warriors, how they believe that changing speech can, help things like stop racism, sexism, which obviously I disagree with, and you need to change material conditions instead. I wanted to get the fact that there is another, a real left out there which advocates for an entirely different system to capitalism for many reasons other than just our feels or just because we like poor people better than rich people, but because capitalism has many inherent problems which are causing detrimental effects to the entire world. And also getting the main definitions of socialism and communism out there, which a lot of people are misconstrued about. But it's definitely been fun debating you today, dudes. Definitely,
it's been fun. You could probably come on anytime.
Gone through some. Oh, definitely, because there are so many other topics that we can touch on. I'd love to.
If you'd like to. If you have.
And I'd like to say, and for my bit, I'd like to say I appreciate you being a stand-up actual Marxist communist instead of one of these fucking ridiculous social justice warriors. So
I actually do have some kind of